We've been walking through the forest with blood on our hands. We got lost in such a foreign lands where we could be free. We could be free.
Hello and welcome to A Race Against Time, a Profit podcast. My name is Jake Williams and I'm the host of the Business of Betting podcast, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by the co-founders of Profit to talk about their entertaining and fascinating journey from a Tennessee dorm room to football-crazed London. This is a podcast about the journey of two men who are building a betting business, and they share what the life of a startup in this industry is really like. I hope you can join us as we go from Nashville to New York to Tokyo and land in London, as the guys shape Profit from an idea to a business. So Dean, tell me a little bit about you and how you got started in this world and what led you to be a bet profit man.
Originally, when I was in 11th grade, my dad put me into his office pool for spread picks. I didn't even know what betting was. And he said, this is what a spread means. If it's -3, it means the team's favored by 3. Give me your picks. It's $20 center. There's 40 guys, and the winner takes it all. And I was like, all right, cool. He was like, we'll split it. So the first week I won. I think I went like 12-4, and I made $400. And the second week I won again, and I made another $400. And the people in his pool were like, why the hell is this 16-year-old who just joined the pool winning every week? If he wins one more week, he's out. And sure enough, I won the third week, and they kicked me out. And ever since then, I've been super into sports betting.
Dean's making it seem like he's some sports betting savant over here.
Oh, it's total beginner's luck. I mean, which I came to learn pretty painfully over college when I just continued to lose and lose money. It was brutal. So I met Jake basically the first day of freshman year. I was rooming with his good friend from home. We both learned pretty quickly. We were pretty avid sports fans. We were both into betting. We were both terrible at betting, kind of had no idea what we were doing. Someone introduced me to parlays called accumulators in the UK, and I started taking those like a total sucker and was losing a ton, which led us eventually to start our own book, which we'll get into. But after school, after graduation, I was doing banking at a firm now called Baird Capital, and I hated it with every inch of my body. And Jake messaged me in August asking if I wanted to start this, and eventually fast forward to now, and I'm the CEO of Profit. I'll let Jake introduce himself. He's COO. And we're about a few days from launch now. We finished our fundraising round, and we're trying to change the game over in the UK and the US with a secondary marketplace for sports bets where you can buy and sell percentages of bets.
Jake, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about your background? I'm guessing it might be something similar or there's some overlap in the different experiences, but before you guys met, what was your first look into this world?
My first look into this world was essentially the company called Sense Sports. It was really free-to-play gaming before free-to-play was ever invented. And I don't know if anyone's going to connect with me on this here, but I must have been like at least 10 or 12 years old. Sense Sports gave you a penny, and if you turned that penny into a certain amount, they would let you withdraw for real cash. So you were betting the penny to win, to go up to 2 pennies, to go up to 4 pennies, which of course I wouldn't even go near with my time today, but little 10-year-old me saw a thrill in it. I actually did end up cashing out at one point, like somewhat like 10 or 20 bucks, which was, I was walking around to all my friends bragging, letting them know that, hey, I won 10, 20 bucks off this free thing called Sense Sports, and walked into school with my head and shoulders held high, even though at the time probably no one really gave a shit. But that was my first glimpse into this. Fantasy football over in the States is huge, so that was obviously a huge jumping point as well. I guess you could consider that the first real gambling I did, considering we were putting in money. Never was really great at fantasy football, but as soon as I really discovered sports betting in college, Freshman year, when I met Dean, I don't think Dean just from day one was like, Jake, let's sports bet. But somehow over the course of that time, that conversation happened, and there were some early days and some stuff that I think about now that's extremely funny to think back on, and how we went about it and some stupid shit we did. But ultimately fell in love with it, and despite losing money, and found ourselves here, I guess, as Dean said.
So, Dean, you guys met when you were at college together?
Yeah, we met on the first day, actually.
My good friend from high school got in off the wait list to the university that Dean and I went to, Vanderbilt, and Dean got off the wait list too. So they were essentially got in at the same time together and had mutual connections, and that's, I guess, the rest is history right there.
Yeah, and as two Jews in the Northeast of the United States, you basically know or have mutual friends with every other Jew that's in the Northeast in the United States. So when you're at Vanderbilt that has a small Jewish population, you all just kind of get thrown into the mix together, and you all kind of know each other already.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. So it was easy to meet Jake and the rest of the Jewish squad at Vanderbilt.
What was your experiences with the betting and gambling at the university? A lot of people talk about it. There might be different aspects to it, but what was your experience over the years in that space?
So the U.S. is really, it's just so different. And people in the UK, they hear our stories about betting in the U.S. and they're just completely shocked. At Vanderbilt, it's probably 15 fraternities, and then there's probably 2 to 3 bookies in each pledge class of each fraternity. So there's probably over 100 bookies in Vanderbilt. And that's not even including the ones that aren't in fraternities. And it's like that at every college. This isn't just an issue at Vanderbilt. Because one, there's no legal betting, and two, you're all under 21. So this is really your only option. So the betting experience at college is someone houses everyone's bets, and you're either doing it through going on a site like Bovada, which is like an offshore site, and taking a screenshot of that bet and then sending it over text to your bookie, or you're going on a site like Bookie Market, which is just like a really, really shitty betting website that just allows you to bet with, in quotations, credit, and then whatever you're up or down on the week, your bookie will then request you on Venmo, Square Cash, Google Wallet, whatever it is that you're using. And then that's how you do it. It's like 50 years behind the UK.
It's Dean's even taken it a little further. I remember having to go back and physically settle up on either a Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever it was, and handling it in cash, as crazy as that sounds. So how I got that through and where I got that money through, my parents not finding out, I don't know. But I physically remember going to the ATM, walking to the guy's dorm room, whatever it may be, and dropping the money off. Obviously, you can tell that more of the memories are from me dropping off the money than receiving it. But it was pretty archaic and still is pretty archaic over there.
In Australia anyway, 18 is the gambling age, and when you're 18 and you're at university or in the workforce, you can sign up for a betting account pretty quickly and start betting through a typical corporate bookmaker and have that experience straight away. So this whole underground culture, underground marketplace, underground bookie situation is pretty unique, probably anywhere else in the world. I'm trying to think of other places where it might be a similar experience. It's probably very US-centric.
Yeah, maybe like Japan or something. Something else to note is that you would never, because the system was so broken, you wouldn't lay out money when you originally put your bet down. So now when we talk to people about our product and they're like, oh, you have to lay the money out if you want to place a bet.
People as in US people.
It's wild that US guys are reluctant to lay down money to place a bet because we're just homegrown into this illegal form of betting where you just kind of bet with like fake money originally until you square up at the end of the week.
It's difficult making the transition from betting fake money to real money, let me tell you.
Did anyone ever win like $5,000 on a 10-team parlay or accumulator or something crazy like that while you're there, or was everyone just settling up their $100 or $200 on a Tuesday, losing, too many bets that they can remember?
I would say it was more so the latter. There were instances. I think I remember once we took over the bookie role, there were instances of a few $1,000s being won, but nothing in terms of like a 10-team five leg parlay that's paying out like $5K. It's also would be on the bookie, so we weren't operating through one of those sites that gives you the quote unquote credits. We were more so taking those bet slips, so we're able to assess the risk in real time. So we'd be like, okay, this guy wants to lay $1,000 to win this five grand. Who wants to have a hell of a Thursday night? And we'd kind of vote on it or not. And most of the time it was actually pretty even. So it was always a fight, and there was always one deciding vote, which was the fun part. But no, nothing I can specifically remember. We've got tons of stories about people not paying up, losing $5,000, but paying out $5,000 now.
I remember one time my friend took a golf bet. I remember he took like Wesley Bryan to win some tournament. I had like never even heard of who it was, and I'm a golfer myself. He was like 5 back. He was 80-1 to start the day to win. He put $20 on it to win 1,600, and Wesley Bryan won the tournament. I forgot what it was. It was like late 2016 or early 2017, and we had a great week. And then I put this slip into our group, and I was like, oh, this is a pretty big hit. And the 4 other guys, including Jake, who I was doing this with, were like, there's no fucking way that hit. Like, there's no way he put that in on time. Like, they had me like check the timestamp of when he texted it to me, and then if the timestamp was different in the screenshot versus when he sent it, like that's a method of trying to scum someone out. I remember that really well, getting screwed on that one, but he didn't cheat us. He actually hit that one, that 80-1 Wesley Bryan.
Wow. How many hours of your week was consumed by this type of stuff? Was it, Saturday morning you'd spend an hour doing it and just firing some stuff, or was it all the time?
No. I wish it was an hour on Saturday morning. It was honestly constant. So it was just getting pings on your phone number on your phone. So it would be slips coming in. We put them into a spreadsheet we have. So it was either, if I wasn't doing much my senior year, honestly, so it was more easier for me to load manage that. And it honestly depended on how many of us had clients. So we each split up our clientele in terms of who we were close with in terms of relationship wise. So if I was taking bets from my home friends, from people I knew better at university than he knew at university, stuff like that. But I would call it like almost a part-time, full-time gig.
Oh yeah, completely. It's also hilarious how we refer to them as clients when they're really just all our friends.
Yeah, clients.
Yeah, clients. But yeah, it took up a lot of time, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when we'd be going out and weren't paying attention to our phones really. And I'd get a bet slip. I would always just okay it. And then Sunday would come and I would be sitting on my couch for like 3 to 4 hours going through my texts, like filtering them all through into a spreadsheet, seeing what won and what lost. If a big one won, I would check to see if the guy tried to screw me or not. So it was totally a full-time job.
Was there ever any run-ins with the school, or did anyone care, or was this just a normal part of daily life at universities?
I know of people who had their Chase bank accounts shut down because they had too much flowing in and out of their accounts. But I never heard of anyone getting in trouble with the school, including us. We actually sat down with an investor once, and we told him the story of our book and why we originally started doing this. And he said, "Did you ever take bets from any faculty?" And we were like, "You out of your fucking mind? Do you think we want to get kicked out of school?"
That was like serious. His first question too. Like it was like, "Oh, did these guys take bets from the faculty?" And we're like, "No, obviously not." That was a part of it though. Like having to who you were taking it from and being in contact with was because these relationships. Because as we said before, you're betting with fake money, so you're relying on this person to pay out at X point. So a lot of that was taken into account in terms of who we were actually dealing with. But no real risk run-ins, anything like that. The biggest problem we had was our Venmo limits being frozen. I think they only let you Venmo like $3,000 out in a week, which hearing me say that now sounds a little bit crazy, but we hit that block quite a bit.
So who else knew about it? Was it, you talk about your clients or your friends, but like, do your parents know this is going on? Do you have like other family who have any idea? Like, it seems like a big part of your life back then, or a big part of your time commitment. Is it pretty much under the radar?
I actually have a funny story about that. So my mom gave me a couple $100 every month as an allowance. So obviously we didn't have jobs at school, and she had no idea that I was running this book. I guess now she will know, now that we're putting this podcast out there. But anyway,
Sorry, Mom.
it got to a point where in like February or March, my mom called me and she was like, Dean, you haven't touched your bank account in 6 or 7 months. Like, do you have another job? Like, how are you making money? And I was like, oh, well, I actually got my bonus I got a signing bonus from the bank I'm working at pretty early. So I've just been using that since August. And she was like, oh, okay. Like, how much was the bonus? And I was like, it was enough.
It honestly
no,
felt like money laundering.
Yeah, I actually had to start like forcing myself to like use the money she was giving me just so she wasn't on to me.
Did you have limits? Did you take any crazy numbers, or was it pretty much understood that there was, unspoken limits?
It was a case by case basis. So depending on what we were feeling at the time, how good our week was going, there was nothing set in stone or any rules we had in place, which was, again, now me hearing myself say this, a little crazy. But we would kind of just take it as we went. I think the most we took once was a $5,000 bet. And that was on a team that was on LSU football minus 800, so it was like 5,000 to win 1,200 or something like that, and it lost. So didn't even get that money, actually, speaking of risk. But I can't remember any instances other than that. But no, case by case basis, really.
So is this business still going on today? Have you got tentacles still going on in the different universities, including Vanderbilt, or is it all wrapped up?
All clean, Jake. All clean.
What led you to finish it all up? Was it graduation day and you had no choice and you were leaving the state of Tennessee, or what happened?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely people still wanting to bet with us or using us as the source upon graduation. I actually didn't want to stop at all. I was so miserable at my job, and this was entertaining me and getting me. Day baseball was getting me through the day, and just watching people and shit like that. But I think everyone else reached the point where they were like, okay, I have a real job that I care about, and we should probably shut this down. So I actually got outvoted. But it was probably for the best, and I've since come to terms with the decision.
So is college bookmaking a profitable endeavor, or was it spent on a lot of typical vices like beer and parties and some trips?
Both.
Yeah, we definitely had a lot of disposable income to play around with. Our thinking was we didn't deserve this money in the first place, so we may as well spend it and have fun with it. I put like a little more than half of it away into stocks. It proved to be a good decision because it made us, it allowed us to actually continue doing profit for a little while longer until we got funding. But I definitely spent a huge chunk of that on beer or whatever it may have been.
I remember there being times where it was like, there was a party and we needed money for a slip and slide or for beer or whatnot, and people just being like, Jake, Dean, like the book, like you guys want to pay for all this? And sometimes we would. More than often than not, we just say fuck off. But there were instances. I remember ordering some water balloons, and not that water balloons are any mass expense or whatnot, but there were definitely times that we gave back to the community, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, philanthropy is always appreciated. So, Dean, you went into the banking job. Jake, what were your next movements? It sounds like there was a little bit of a interlude there before the team got back together and started this.
Yeah, I was doing a financial consulting global company called Capco. I was basically sitting in the middle office of a bank doing operational work. Completely miserable, wasn't learning anything, felt like everyone that was giving me instructions was dumber than I was, which you can call what you want, but I was just so unsatisfied with my current situation. I just started exploring more and more in sports betting, and I guess at some point my intuition said hit up Dean. I had to kind of drag Dean into it at the beginning, but I think I got him there after a few months.
Yeah, I wasn't totally sold. If you ask the five of us who ran this book who thought of the idea, we'll all say that each of us thought of it. So when Jake reached out, I had already looked into it and I found this company called PropSwap. And I was like, someone's already doing it. Like, it's a good idea, but, blah, blah, blah. And then Jake looked into it more and he was like, this company is a pile of dog shit. Like, we totally have to do this. And then he was explaining to me more of how PropSwap operated, where you can only buy tickets at a physical casino, and then you have to either mail them the ticket or they pick it up for you, which is just incredibly inefficient, obviously. And then if you buy that ticket, then they mail it to the buyer, and then the buyer has to collect the money from the casino somehow. So it's just horribly clunky and totally ineffective. And then that's when I really started to think, okay, maybe this can happen. And then Jake really took the lead in calling all the attorneys. Since I was a little busier than he was at my job, I couldn't really handle all that. He handled all the phone calls for the most part. I don't know how many made up doctor appointments I could have possibly had. Like, I was going to the chiropractor in quotation marks like 2 or 3 times a week at one point, just leaving my desk so I can hop on the phone. But yeah, he really took the reins.
I was also pitching more so of a financial market approach, being in finance for however long I was at the time. So pitching like bid, ask, like stuff like that, like something that everyone who's probably listening to this, if anyone is listening to this or anyone at all has thought of in terms of just doing so. And so it kind of just evolved over time into seeing, okay, well, we obviously we can make a stock market for bets, but there's kind of a graveyard of companies that have done that. And there's obviously a whole new wave of legislation and technology coming through, but kind of just phone call after phone call, and talking to customer or potential customer after potential customer, we just started slowly iterating and whatnot to make ourselves have a little bit of a spin and a little bit of a different twist. So it was fun figuring that out, looking back on it. But I remember at points being extremely, extremely frustrated with. Well, I still am, and do hate attorneys. No offense, Jake, over there. I can't deal with them, but especially at the time, just initially getting to know that side of things, it was a complete headache, especially dealing with being miserable in the middle office of a bank.
So what was the main motivation, other than just having, I guess being college bookies sounds really exciting. It's probably a lot of fun. There's probably some time commitment, as you mentioned, but generally seems like a pretty cool way to exist, living on a college campus. It sounds like an American Pie type movie or road trip or something, but going from that to the real world and then thinking about what's next, was that an easy thing, or what was the true motivation behind it all?
It was honestly too easy, I think. I can't answer that question with any certainty in terms of what was the push or what was the specific reason that I started moving forward or whatnot. Maybe it was because I missed making all the money. Maybe it was I missed the camaraderie or watching sports to make money. I don't know. I'm sure it was a combination of everything, but I don't think this would have been something that I would have been going after if I hadn't genuinely thought and saw a need. So when the U.S. obviously started looking like it was going to open up, and I was looking at this pre-PASPA, so I knew that kind of PASPA was going to be repealed, but didn't really know when or how or anything really surrounding it. But started looking at the secondary market and whatnot, and thought, oh, well, if you can make a financial market for bets, it's a secondary market. That's all well and good, and you could probably make a ton of money, but it seems a lot more difficult and not as feasible as kind of attacking the cash out pain point and the thing that already existed in the UK. So a lot of the thinking early on was going against the grain. So everyone's coming into the US and trying to get their foothold in the US to a market that's immature and not developed and hasn't seen anything like this. And we kind of looked back and said, okay, well, there is inefficiencies elsewhere with already regulatory markets in place and money to be made, plenty of money to be made elsewhere. And we don't have to be a bookie and sit there and A, manage a bankroll, B, take money from people. So I guess long answer there, but a myriad of things.
I think when I found out that we can get a license in the UK and operate this platform with different branding and messaging to make it a little more easier for users, that's when it all started to click that, you know what, this probably can work. And that was probably around November, December. The licensing process was a horrendous experience, and we have a ton of good stories about that. But yeah, that's when it really clicked, when we saw that we can get a license.
And that's November, December 2017, I assume you mean, Dean.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure you didn't buy in about 9 months ago.
So we're going to get into all of that and all the different elements from that period of time onwards. Before we jump forward, I just want to one last question on, I guess, before then and some of the stuff we've already talked about through the college days, the real working job days. What type of thoughts and feelings does that period of your life evoke for you guys? Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more seriously about some of the more business aspects, and we'll get into some of the more detailed components of building the business, building the tech, and some of the other elements. But going back, do you look fondly on those years, or how do you feel about that period of your life?
My company that I worked for was an absolute fucking dumpster fire. I mean, like the management had, like, they were really smart guys and they had a lot of experience in investment banking and they did a lot of deals, but their time was kind of winding down, and it seemed to me and my other analysts and employees that they had no idea what they were doing, and that's why everyone left within a 1 month span. However, that being said, I did learn a ton. I would never know how to model anything out if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't know how to talk to investors if it wasn't for them, and talk to them about how we're going to use our funding and over what time period that looks like and what metrics we need to measure the most and look at. And in addition to that, since I was at a small bank, I got to sit down with these guys all the time in the meetings they were in. And I just kind of sat there like a sponge and looked at how they navigated a room, who could work a room well. And if they could work a room well, how they worked the room, what did they say, how they engaged certain clients, what they did wrong. So really that year and a half, I learned a ton and I'm really thankful for it. But at the same time, it was so incredibly frustrating dealing with my firm.
I think we're on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, Dean, because I remember sitting in these meetings and just trying to soak up as little information as possible. And that was probably me being post-grad, just not really trying to deal with the real world. But I didn't think there was anything to be learned, or I didn't want to utilize any of these skills that I was learning in terms of, I didn't want to be a middle office bank manager or be in the back office and be managing anything surrounding that. So I thought, what's the point of putting in the time? So I look back on all that, and it's more so like, I guess, learning as you go along. And I guess this whole thing has been, Dee and I always say, flying by the seat of our pants over here. But no better way to learn than just being thrown into something you don't know and essentially being told sink or swim. At least that's how I operate. So every moment of the day that I could claw some time back to work on profit, I was doing so. But I look back on those times, great times. I was living in Manhattan with my friends, holding down a nice job, working on something hard on the side. No regrets, really.